Let me know when you see the little recording pop up. Okay. This is Angela Angulo. Today's date is February 9th, 2021, and I'm with participant ID number HBKL126. So we're working on a project to promote healthy communities for youth and prevent youth violence in Richmond City. Please remember, everything that you tell us in this interview will be kept private and confidential. After the interview, a member of our staff will remove any names that are mentioned and type up everything that was said. After the project is done, the recordings will be erased, and you can choose not to answer any question or to stop the interview at any point. So throughout the interview, we're going to talk a lot about youth, and by youth, we mean people between the ages of 12 and 17. And we're also going to mention youth violence, and by youth violence, we mean violence involving people ages 12 to 17. Okay, so let's begin. If you have any questions during our interview, please feel free to ask me. So first, I'm going to ask a few questions about your background. So are you still working with the Richmond City Council?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your title or role within your organization?
City Council.
Mm-hmm. So what are your responsibilities as a city councilwoman?
Okay, so we'll make that short. I represent the district, which consists of wards of 30,000 residents. It's an elected position, so I serve at the pleasure of the citizens that vote me in to represent their interests over the city government and the budgeting of all of the tax revenue that citizens pay, which includes providing a host of services in the district that I represent as well as citywide.
Okay. So does your organization provide services and or programs to residents in the following communities? I'm just going to go down the list.
Yes.
Oh. Sorry.
Yes, yes.
How about Wickham?
Yes.
Hillside?
Yes.
Belle Meade?
Yes.
And Guilford?
Citywide, yes, but not within the 6th district.
Okay. So where are your services or programs for the Hillside Belle Meade community located?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So where are your services or programs for Hillside and Belle Meade located? Do you have any?
Well, you know, as a city council representative, we are not the direct deliverer of services, but the services that are delivered in that community, in those communities, are delivered through agencies that we fund for the city of Richmond, and that includes the primary service provider is the Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority. Okay. In addition to that, we provide services through the state, city, health department, and a combination of a large array of nonprofit organizations that provide services at different levels in the prospective communities. For Hillside, is that the one you're asking me specifically?
Hillside and Belle Meade, yes.
Belle Meade. So Belle Meade and Hillside, they have community rec centers there. So, and they also have the Richmond Redevelopment Housing office there, as well as health clinics there that provide direct services to the residents in those communities on site. in Belle Meade, Belle is where most of the services come together as a city agency, but we have other facilities that provide services through an abundance of nonprofit organizations. The Richmond Public School System, which we fund, also provides services, as well as the city library. So those are the main some of the main city funded resources that provide services within those communities.
Okay. So do you personally, through your role in the organization, directly interact with residents of the following communities? Again, I'm just going to go through the list. Mosby?
Yes.
Wickham?
Yes.
Hillside?
Yes.
Belle Meade?
Yes.
And Gilson?
Yes.
I think your audio and
the
video are lagging a little bit.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I think it's lagging.
I said not as much with Gilpin. Gilpin is not located within the 6th district, but you know, because I work very closely with the Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority, the board of directors, and many of the and on the board of directors for the Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority, we also have residents that live in Gilpin that we communicate on a regular basis with, and you know, we're engaged with a lot of the activities and programming that goes on in Gilpin. But I would say of the locations that you mentioned, the direct services are probably less, or my personal direct interaction is less with Gilpin than it is with the others.
Okay. So the rest of the interview will be specifically about the Hillside and Belle Meade communities. So just so that's in mind. So how would you describe the Hillside and Belle Meade communities over the past 12 months?
Well, you know, the last 12 months has been very challenging because of, not unusual, because we're dealing so much with the outcomes and the challenges that we face with the COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Those challenges have a tremendous impact on especially Belle Meade and Hillside. But I would say that Belle Meade and Hillside are two connecting communities, but significantly different communities. Hillside is a public housing community that is under the management of Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, has 400 plus housing units that probably house close to 800, 900 plus persons on small geographical footprint, very dense in population, have a large population of children under the ages of 5, and majority of the adult population is, 21 to 30, 35. And so we do have a significant number in comparison to other neighborhoods of young people in the ages as you define as youth within the Hillside community. Most of the families, almost all of the families, I would say probably at least 95 or more, extremely poor, way below 30% area median income. and a very few that above 50% of the area median income for the city of Richmond. So very concentrated in very, very old housing that is truly has exceeded its lifeline, has tremendous code violations, not only in the housing, but also in the environmental grounds for the community. It lacks adequate child care services. It lacks sufficient services based on the population that exists there. Unemployment is extremely high. Employment that is in place is very, very low wages. And in many cases, a family, even on the low wages that they may earn, anywhere from a high of $15,000 a year for the working families, could easily consist of 2 jobs. Most of the time, jobs with no benefits, and which leads to a strong dependency on support services, federally funded support services, in order to meet their basic needs. Lots of hunger that exists in the community, very poor nutrition in the community, very subjected to looking for alternative ways of earning sources of income to address basic needs, which tends to lead to violation of regulations and policies because they live in public housing. The restriction on their lives as to what they can do and what they can't do is tremendous. If you smoke, you can smoke in your house. You can smoke outside your house. You live in public housing, you can't do that. Not that I'm a supporter of smoking, but I use that as just an example of the regulatory restraints that are placed on residents that live in publicly supported housing or depend on public supported sources of income, whether it's for food or other essential services. The regulations are extremely restrictive, and they tend to force people to make decisions for simply survival that may be subject to violation of the law. And so consequently, crime becomes an issue. We call it crime, but in reality, it's people making necessary decisions for basic needs of life. Society calls it crime. Belle Meade is a different community, largely built an old, small residential suburban community where families live. Most of them are living in single family homes. Many of them may be renters now. Used to be all single family home ownership. Income levels, many of them are retired. Many of them are living on a fixed income because they are retired, but have a lifestyle that is adaptable to the cost of living in a lot of cases. It's going through in the process of going through gentrification. And so a lot of the families that live in the Belle Meade community are very concerned about the escalation in property values and the potential of displacement as property values accelerate, and they may or may not be able to afford from their fixed income to continue to live in their homes.
Mhm. Okay. So how is that similar or different to how things have been in the past? You mentioned, like, for example, Belle Meade is going through the process of gentrification. Is there anything else that's different from how it's been in the past, or is it uh mostly consistent, like in those two communities?
Consistent with,
In how you described it, how you described the community over the past year, is it similar or different to how things have been in the past?
in a year's time, housing patterns don't change that much. Values in Belle Meade are beginning to ticker up, which is a significant change. There is more interest in the private sector developers to build more houses, and mostly multifamily houses in the single family community area. There is resistance from long-term residents that are homeowners that have lived in the community, that have enjoyed the pleasure of only having single family homes, and a concern about increased density, traffic, noise, and all of the other kinds of NIMBYisms that people tend to believe are real as it relates to multifamily housing. The difference with the multifamily housing that is being bought into Belle Meade is for the purpose of increasing values in the community. So the private sector is aggressively looking at ways to build multifamily with higher rents, which will ultimately lead to property values increases, which is the pattern by which values of properties is done and encouraged by the private market, and ultimately will have a significant impact on the small, 1-story, 3-bedroom, single family homes that sits on nice sized lots. And so what we will see happen, what we know we will see happen next, is that we will start getting special use permits to split those lots and build either 2 single family homes on a lot, which will sell for 3 to 4 times the value of the existing single family home that is currently on the lot. And as a result of that, it will lead to what we refer to as gentrification, which is really just a market-driven escalation of property values and profit margins and profit gains at the expense most time of residents that have lived for years in these communities not being able to afford and are subsequently dislocated, especially those that are living in rental single-family homes.
Okay. So what have you noticed about youth violence in the Hillside and Belle Meade communities in the past 12 months?
So we are working with the Hillside community at the present time to have the community youth to design a safe place to play. A year ago, we had I think the kid was 2 years old, 3 years old, murdered by a stray bullet. He was within 6 feet of his door, playing in front of his door with his sisters. And a drive-by shooter, not intended on shooting and killing this kid, but gun violence and self-policing is a real issue in the Hillside community, and it also has its impact in the Belle Meade community in certain areas of Belle Meade that are subjected to main traffic arteries that support some of the kinds of activity that tends to prey on low-income residents' need for money. And money, the lack of money, the lack of any kind of reasonable income and poverty robs people of the necessary money to just make a living. And so there are industries that contribute to an underground economy, and that industry is usually not led by people of poverty, but recognize that people of poverty pawns that they can use for the purpose of distributing their illegal merchandising. And most of those merchandises cause addiction, and addiction is a guaranteed customer. And so the industry feeds on itself. And because it's not a legal industry, guns become a means of protection for almost anyone that lives in those communities, whether they are participating in the underground illegal merchandising or not. Self-protection becomes a challenge, because if you're living in an environment where you have an economy that is underground and it's not legal, then you have to police yourself. And so consequently, gun trades is a large part of the merchandising. And so we have too many people that are victims of gun violence, which also leads to family issues and domestic violence and those types of things that come along with it. It's a sad story.
Sounds like it. It's horrible. Thank you for sharing. So for the next question, sometimes reviews of communities are shaped by stereotypes. So for instance, we may hear misinformation or stereotypes about the Hillside and Belle Meade community. So based on your work, knowledge, and interactions with the Hillside and Belle Meade community, what are some truths about Hillside and Belle Meade that you wish were told?
The real truth about Hillside and Belle Meade, both communities, is that they are community. They know each other. They know people by name. They know people by their children's name. They know the value of community. They want great things for their children, great things for themselves. They seek opportunities for growth and to advance. Their hill to climb is like its name. It's a steep hill. It's a very steep hill. Many succeed and do well. Many take advantage of opportunities that are afforded them and go back to school and get more education, and are successful in getting their children through school and sending their kids off to college. They have the courage to live. They're very creative, very innovative. One of the things that we are learning about the children and the families that live in Hillside as a part of doing this playground in honor of this young kid that was unfortunately killed right in front of his doorstep. It's amazing the ambition and the talents that exist and what they want in their community. They want the same thing in their community that anyone else wants in their community. The creativity of how they want to redesign, the basketball courts, the playground, the number of businesses that these young people, youth that you're speaking of, have presented us with business plans to start their own business, that they're literally creating the product themselves, and they have designed the product and they've mapped it out, that is just absolutely fascinating and so creative and ambitious. They know how to make things work. They have very limited revenue, but they are extremely creative in that process. And from how to fix the best meal that you will ever have in your life, to doing the best job at fixing your hair. I mean, it's amazing. Their skill set and designs of clothes and that they would want to design and create, that if we set them up with a backroom business that provided the infrastructure and the equipment, great things. We would see extreme great things and opportunities for wealth building that would be sustainable for them. The challenge is breaking the cycle of codependency on federal subsidies to move to this level of self-sustainable economic growth. And the bridge from one to the other is not allowed by the masters of federal dependency that literally invest more money in paying staff and administrators of federal subsidies than the actual reward a subsidy that literally goes to the person that's in need. And so the demand for the staffing and the headhunters of the federal government programming, rules and regulations prevent a bridge of being built credibly, legally, to a sustainable lifestyle.
Okay. So can you tell me about 3 good or positive things that have happened in the Hillside and Belle Meade communities in the past 12 months? And that can be specific events or policies or anything really.
So in the last accomplishments that have been made, the Housing Authority was actually not recording residents' rental payments as required. So if you live in Hillside and you were paying your rent, and you had asked for a housing service to be provided, like, fix the window, fix the door, fix the air condition, fix the heating, fix something, there's a service fee that is charged to the residents to come out to do maintenance work. Okay? So if you don't pay the fee, okay, because most residents don't feel like they should have to pay the fee. You should fix this because you're supposed to. So when you pay your rent, instead of your money going to your rent, they would take the fee out of your rent, which means that you were delinquent in paying your rent. Okay? And so The same thing applied with your utility bill. So if you were behind on your utility bill, which you paid directly to the housing authority, when you paid your rent, instead of it going all to your rent, it would take it out for your utility bill. Okay.
Mm.
And so people were significantly behind in their rent all the time. And then they were subject to eviction.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a huge number of residents that were being evicted from public housing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to get arms around that, to correct those policies that if I pay my rent, it goes to my rent. It does not, you can't take part of my rent and pay toward fees or other things that I owe, but I'm paying my rent. And it's not for you to take that money and then subject me to eviction. Now, I'm not saying all evictions that was the cost, but if you're asking me what things have changed, that were significant and very helpful. You know, the playground that we're working on right now with the residents, that they're actually designing it. They're working with professional engineers, architects that are actually coming in, spending time. My liaison is leading that effort on my behalf. He meets with them monthly, twice monthly. The children are involved in the entire process. It's led by the community. There's a significant growth in the leadership in the community because of that. And these are young people that are taking that leadership. And so out of that, we hope to have a very strong community safety youth organization that will continue to carry that mission of a safe neighborhood design beyond just the playground, because we are looking at other features in the community as well. And we're not looking for the outcome to be the typical, tot lot that you see in every community that is pretty much the same manufacturer that puts the same design out. This is really they're creating their own design in the process. So really excited about that, and we see that as great opportunity for community ownership and community engagement. What those young people design for their community, it will be theirs. And that ownership is one of the objectives that we see coming out of this, and we're very.
Okay. Real quick, I'm going to pause the recording for a second. Okay. Unpause. Okay. So we were talking about the three good things that have happened in the Hillside and Belle Meade community in the past 12 months. So you mentioned correcting policies for rent payments and the playground being designed by the residents. Also, how did these things impact the youth who are living in the Hillside and Belle Meade communities?
How does these things impact the residents of the community?
Yeah, specifically the youth who are living in Hillside and Belle Meade.
Well, the piece with the rent stuff was, the outcome of that was that we were able to divert the evictions that were taking place, and we were able to get the rents recorded the way that they should be recorded. We also was able, due to the pandemic, to make sure that no one was evicted from their housing units. The working with the young folk in the community is leading to a lot more safer place for children to play, and also to provide them with an opportunity to take ownership in their community and provide their leadership in the community. We have provided additional desk, fold-up desks for residents, so that children that are being taught remotely from Richmond Public School have a good desktop to do their work on. We have done a lot to encourage residents to be involved in the mentoring and tutoring of the children and providing more support from that perspective. Food has been coordinated and delivered on a regular basis within the community so that during the time of the pandemic that we are practicing those distancing and washing their hands and being safe. We've provided additional protective equipment within the community so that masks and sanitation and those kinds of things are provided for the health and safety of the families in both Belle, Meade and in Hillside.
Okay. So how have all of these things that you mentioned, the playground and correcting policies for rent payments, how have these things impacted the caregivers who are living in Hillside and Belle Meade?
Well, you know, the caregivers, all of these things supplement the needs of the caregiver to be able to provide the services that are necessary within the household to protect their families as it relates to the virus, to providing healthcare services, and to make sure that people are fed. You know, these are wonderful supplements that we are providing to make for a holistic family environment and a holistic community.
Okay. Excuse me. So can you tell me about 3 bad or adverse things that have happened in the Hillside and Belle Meade communities in the past 12 months? And again, that can be policies or events or anything.
The community has been somewhat concerned that they are experiencing more gunfire in the community. The isolation that is caused by the increased isolation caused by the pandemic makes it very extremely difficult for the crowdedness in the housing environment that limits the outdoor activities that, you know, kids can get outside, adults can get outside and do the kinds of things that needs to be done. A lot of the resources that have been available are more difficult to get to because of the virus. So the virus has certainly had its impact on the community. There have been more gunshots in the community. There have been a loss of the opportunities for interaction that was being able to be had at the recreational centers, children not being able to go to school. Most of the negative things that have been experienced has been directly because of COVID and the inability of some of the things that would have normally been done, not able to be done. Service providers can't come and provide the kind of hands-on direct services that used to be provided. So those are the kinds of things that I would say in the last year have most had a negative impact on the community.
So how have these things impacted the youth who are living in Hillside and Belle Meade?
Same, you know, not opportunities for jobs, no opportunity to have those kind of interactions. The sports team that the community leaders, the tenant civic association leaders there that would have those activities, the gardens that children were engaged with, the bike clubs that children have been engaged with, many of those things have not been able to be done because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
right now, the greatest challenge is, we have been told that the number of cases of COVID-19 infection are higher in our public housing community and low-income communities. Right now, we are in a fight for our lives to make those communities a top priority for receiving the vaccine, which so far has not been the case. The disparity in the distribution of the vaccine is follow the trend. Those that have and have means receiving, 3 to 4 times the number of vaccine shots versus those that historically we've been able to document that have a higher number of infection as a result of the COVID-19, but they are not top on the list to be the first to receive the vaccine, which is another tremendous blow to families that have been publicized for the last year, that they are adversely impacted and are more susceptible and have had the highest number of cases of the virus and deaths, but yet they're not the top priority to get the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hurdle that we're dealing with right now. There's another incident of people that live in poverty being disvalued by our society.
Mm-hmm.
And we expect them to be happy people all the time.
Mm-hmm. So what would you like to see change in the Hillside and Belle Meade community in terms of safety?
Well, first of all, I'd like to see the community improved, that they have the benefit of great green space, that they have great gardens and great areas for outdoor living that is of quality and value, and that we have more activities that encourage people to be engaged in the outside environment of their homes.
Okay.
I would like to see the right kind of safety features put in place to provide for open air environments, that window treatments are done so that people can have daylight that comes into their homes. Protective, decent window treatments are put in so that they are secure. Health issues are addressed so that people have safe health environments to live in, that the old dilapidated housing that is not insulated, that doesn't have adequate facilities. I'd like to see laundromats, because we don't have washers and dryers in any of these units. We don't have central air in any of these units. Those are the kinds of safety things that needs to be done to provide for a quality living environment, which will bring about more community safety in and of itself. And I want us to get away from the thought that safety means policing, more police. We need police and we welcome police. But neighborhoods that are safe are not safe because of police is sitting on every corner. But I wanted to take what makes a community safe and make it a reality in their community as well.
Okay. So what would you like to see changed in the Hillside Belle Meade community in terms of positive opportunities for youth?
Every youth, every child, and we'll just talk about the youth. Every child 12 years old should have a job. They should have a means by which to work and to understand the values of work and the opportunities of work. And the federal government should not include salaries that are stipends or wages that are paid to you as a source of household income for the purpose of reducing the household dependency on federal subsidies. It should not be counted as income.
Okay. So you may have mentioned some of these in your previous answers, but also what would you like to see changed in the Hillside Belle Meade community to create a healthier community?
Well, you got 900 people or more living in a very, very tight, small space. So, we have to look at what things are healthy. There should be a health clinic that's there that provides quality healthcare services for children so that they all get their shots that they need when they need them. There needs to be dental care. There needs to be eye care. So a complete medical care service should be provided by the state through our BCU campus. That is a state-exempt tax entity that provides healthcare services. Should be mandatory that anytime we put that many people of poverty in one location, that we provide a full healthcare service facility within the community. Mm-hmm. There should be food, healthy food access. There should not be food deserts. There should be credit unions, financial institutions that provide means for helping people to make their revenue, what they earn, work for them. So food deserts, financial deserts, and lack of medical health care, full health care facilities should be provided.
Okay. So is there anything that gets in the way of change from happening in Hillside and Belle Meade? Is there anything that gets in the way of change from happening in Hillside and Belle Meade?
I'm not sure you said, what are you saying as far as change? Did you say wage?
Yeah, is there anything that gets in the way of change from happening in Hillside and Belle Meade?
Yeah. It's all about what one can afford to pay. Mm-hmm. There should be a sliding scale that makes it affordable for essential services to be provided based on someone's income. And we don't have that.
Okay. Is there anything that gets in the way of change in Hillside and Belle Meade on issues dealing with youth violence?
Yeah. Disciplinary challenges that we face in our community should be treated with a sense of concern about the cause. What causes those things to happen? And providing services to address what's the cause of those things to happen versus treating it as a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If a 12-year-old has disciplinary problems, the first person that is called should not be the police, and the person is arrested because they talk back to their teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they're subject to be suspended. So suspension from school, which we don't have that issue right now with COVID, of course, but we do have that because kids are not showing up, remotely in class. That the things that get in the way is our kids not being educated.
Mm-hmm.
When that graduation rate in Hillside Court, if we looked at our graduation rate, I'm sure they're less than 35% graduation on time. I'm guessing. I don't know that to be a fact. But I'm saying that simply because income levels seems to have a tremendous impact on graduation rates. And we haven't fixed that. We let that be the person's problem. Kids are not reading to grade level by third grade. That's a barrier. We can fix that. We should fix that.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of education. So then you call the police for me, and then I've got a criminal record at 12 years old. Nobody's going to hire me for a job.
Okay.
Over-policing is a real issue, and it's not because of the police that shows up. It's because of the policies, the legislative policies for what we consider as crime and the offense that we put on people's back to carry for the rest of their lives.
Okay.
So if I go in the grocery store and steal a bar of candy, am I a thief or am I hungry?
Okay. So, you may have mentioned some of these in all your previous answers, but in the past 12 months, has your organization expanded efforts in Hillside and Belle Meade to improve safety, health, or positive opportunities for youth in the community?
A lot of the expansion of services has been to provide additional food, to provide protective equipment as it relates to COVID-19. There's been policies put in place to make sure that families are not evicted or put out on the street.
Okay.
We have not done enough work to build the kind of relationships that we need to build to reduce the incidence of crime versus providing services where needed. So, such as, where there are cases of overdose, people addicted to drugs, those kinds of services have not been increased and expanded the way that they need to. We are working with the health department to provide more Narcan within the community so that if there are cases of addiction, overdose, we can save people lives. But COVID has taken up a lot of the time and energy as it relates to the protection of preventing the spread of this illness.
So you mentioned a bit about this previously, but in the past 12 months, have you collaborated with other organizations to provide services to Hillside and Belle Meade to improve safety, health, or positive opportunities for youth in the community?
Yes, I think we've answered a lot of these questions, but I'll say again, we work with the health department to provide health services. We've worked with food suppliers to provide distribution of food on a regular basis. My office has directly provided food baskets and food services. We've had community walks on a regular basis to give out protective equipment to prevent the spread of the COVID-19. We've provided additional resources, clothing, blankets, those kinds of things for people to make it through the cold winter months. Extra supplies for children for their education at home, desk, as well as equipment, paper, pencils, those kinds of things to support children's education. We've partnership with many of the nonprofits and the churches in the community to provide mentoring services for children and for adults as needed, as well as provide as much community education and social media, this kind of conversation, Zoom meetings, and those kinds of things that we invite people to be a part of on an ongoing basis to provide them with connection to resources that are available to assist them.
So are there any barriers to your organization collaborating with other organizations to provide services and or positive opportunities for youth in Hillside and Belle Meade?
Yes, there are a significant number of faith-based organizations that are working in the community on an ongoing basis to provide services. The Park and Recreation Department provides youth development services. The mayor's office provides the Youth Academy, which provide jobs and work experiences for young people, which we encourage Belle Meade and Hillside Court youth to be a part of. Bob Augerbright, who works closely with the school system, provides a tremendous volume of youth activities and maintaining of the gardens and encouraging more outdoor activities, putting in bike trails, building gardens on the school campus to encourage young people engagement. And this is all directly directed to youth in the community.
Okay. So in the past 12 months, have residents of Hillside and Belle Meade organized or taken the lead on any activities or events to improve their community?
They work with us on a regular basis, as I've said before, in designing this safe community model.
Okay. So they're kind of taking the lead on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Housing Authority staff provide training on a regular basis for young folk to be involved in those kinds of activities that are going on, additional, homework support systems and those kinds of things as well.
So is there anything that makes it difficult for community residents to organize activities or events to improve their community?
The footprint of the community itself in Hillside is limited. They do not have adequate space in their rec center. The facility is old and it doesn't have great internet connection. Many of the residents don't have access to computers and connection to that. So that internet intelligence is lost due to, in a lot of cases, just not having access. That's one of the major barriers right now for the Hillside community. And in Belle, Meade, a lot of it is like a intelligence to technology and the demand for technology and access to technology to be able to meet their basic needs.
Okay. So can you think of any potential solutions to these barriers that you mentioned?
Well, broadband access is the answer. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be available. It's certainly not something that doesn't exist in the accessible in the community. We need more of that. We need means by which people can have the type of equipment that is necessary to be able to use the modern day technology that's available.
Okay. I'm sorry if you can hear my cat. So is there anything that you think is important for service providers to consider in working with residents to create positive change?
Yeah, I think service providers need to increase their quality of services that they provide. They need to increase their sense of value for the citizens that they're serving. So, example, if the food pantry delivers food on a regular basis to a community because it's hungry, but they don't deliver a healthy meal, okay? Mm-hmm. They bring whatever they have, which too often is lack a good balanced meal. So, those are some of the kinds of things that service providers need to be willing to provide if they're going to deliver service. They need to deliver service for the same level of quality. Now, most of the healthcare services that are provided are trained professionals that are delivering a quality service. It's just inadequate. And so means of leveraging and making sure you're providing the level of services. And then let's not continue to create disparities in our delivery of resources. As we demonstrated with the number of testing that was being done initially with COVID, in certain communities, and communities of color. And also now the disparity as it relates to the vaccine. So I think that service providers need to put an equity lens and an equality lens on everything that they're doing.
Okay. So is there anything that you think is important for residents to consider in working with service providers to create positive change?
Yes, they need to organize. They need to have a strong voice. They need to know what services they should be receiving. They should make sure that they are receiving those services. They should demand that their yards not covered with, mulch that is not treated. We need to stop treating people in Hillside Court as if they second-class, third-class citizens. And so we need to send our residents to the Housing Authority HUD training so that they can be strongly organized. They can know exactly what they expect and what they're supposed to get as tenants for living in these public housing communities, and their appropriations of funds that's supposed to be available for them to self-provide services for their own community and those kinds of things. They need to be trained on all of those resources that are available to them, and they need to be very strong, organized. They need to increase their voter registration, and they need to have a stronger civic voice.
Okay. So who do the residents of Hillside and Belle Meade trust?
Who do they trust? They trust who they know. And if they don't know you, then they don't trust you. And I think that is universal.
Okay.
So who they trust is who they get to know. And how they get to know you is based on how much time you invest in their lives and getting to know them. I think one of the challenges with communities of poverty is there are a lot of people use these communities as study cases, but they don't follow through with the outcome of their studies to deliver what needs to be delivered. That's when it becomes too expensive. It's too cheap to get money to do a study of poor people without any intention of even knowing where the resources to fulfill the outcome of the studies is coming from. And so people that live in these communities feel like they're constantly bombarded with what we're doing right now. 2 hours of my time to tell you what is wrong, which is nothing new. But what difference does it make? Except that there's another documented study that will be published to say that, we're poor and we don't have what other folk have. Nobody wants to be, I don't want that. How'd you like a sign in your yard to say that?
Okay. So the next set of questions asks about your opinions of the leaders in Hillside and Belle Meade. And by leaders, we're talking about people who may or may not live in the community and who have knowledge of community strengths and needs. have influence in the community and who take a lead in helping to achieve community goals. So are there any leaders that are addressing youth violence in Hillside and Belle Meade?
That are inside the community?
Leaders can be or those who live in the community or who don't necessarily live in the community.
Yeah, there are a lot of leaders.
Okay.
There are more leaders than we recognize and that we give credit to being leaders.
Okay.
You know, leaders in the community are aunties, they're grandmamas, they're parents, they're pastors, they are church folk that I go to church with. They're the people I know. And the people I know are leaders, and they come from all walks of life. They're my next door neighbor. There are many, 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 many leaders. There are leaders in the youth organizations, the youth groups, within their own groups. There are always leaders. There are always leaders. And they are recognized by the community as leaders.
Okay.
You know, we did a story a couple of, maybe within this year. It has been within this year of a young lady that lives in Hillside that started a gardening program. And she actually got all of the resources together, and they planted box gardens in the community, and it was all youth-led and all youth-engaged. And they grew vegetables for their families, and they planted small boxes next to their for their neighbors right in front of their door, so that they could grow a small pot of vegetables themselves and flowers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, and she's a fabulous young lady, which has done a super job. There are many that come out of that, you know, that have graduated and are on their way to college and have received scholarships, full scholarships to go on to higher education. There are many, many, many leaders, like in any other population, any other, you know, if you look at the block that you live in, how many leaders are on this block? You know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can think of 5 or 6 that I know right on this block. That's on this side of the block. That doesn't talk about what I know when I look across the alley in the next block, you know? So yeah, they're Hillside and Belle Meade are no different. They've got lots of leaders.
Okay. So has trust between the residents and community leaders changed in the past year?
Has what changed?
Has trust between residents and community leaders changed in the past year?
It all depends on how you measure change.
Okay.
Change is a forever evolving situation. Nothing stays the same. Change is always taking place. You know, it's a matter of how we decide that we want to evaluate change. You know, if we're looking for numbers, how many, you know, was it 5 and now it's 10 to measure change? Or are we looking at quality? Are you looking at leaders that can tell you, I remember when Johnny was not doing well in school and he's doing great now? You know, it depends on what value system are you using to determine what has changed. But I can assure you that change is always taking place.
Okay. Would you say that trust between the residents and community leaders has gotten better or worse over the past year?
I don't think that no, I can't say that. Here again, I don't know what means by which we're measuring change.
Okay.
And so if I don't know what measure you're using for change, it's difficult to say whether it's worse or better. I'm sure there's a combination of some of both.
Okay.
Some change is not for the good, and other change is for the good. So I would suggest that there have been a combination of some of both.
Okay, that makes sense. So what type of information is available in Hillside and Belle Meade about youth violence prevention? And that can be community outreach, newspaper articles, brochures, online information.
I think that the typical information is available, the emergency numbers that you call, if you're having an issue with drug use, a number that you call, what numbers you call for social services and those kinds of things. That kind of information is always available. There are opportunities for more in-depth strategies of communication, how to work together, how to build teams, those kinds of opportunities. That kind of information is always available. And leaders that are in the community are always using those different tools to promote and encourage, positive outcomes.
Okay. So have you heard of any new programs for youth and families in Hillside and Belle Meade in the last year?
I'm trying to think. There was most of the new initiatives have been directly related to distant learning that the children are going through and the parents are going through. So there have been concerted effort on behalf of Richmond Public Schools and other Richmond Public School partners to provide different educational programming and opportunities for both the students as well as for the parents.
Okay. So what have you heard about the Hillside Community Garden?
Well, I just mentioned that a moment ago. Yeah, so I think that's a super opportunity that demonstrates the interest in having quality food available for the community. I think there is an opportunity to expand upon that. There's interest in having a larger garden. I know that there's interest in exploring a vacant lot that's pretty close to the community, that resources is being sought at the present time to acquire use of that open parcel of land. And efforts are being made to work with different community gardener organizations to facilitate working to put together a much, much, much larger garden for the community. And I'm hopeful that will come to pass. That will be super.
Okay. So what have you heard about the activities and resources available at Belle Meade Park?
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. The transformation of that park and the resources that have been put in there are absolutely fabulous. And the young people that are engaged in that process are learning horticulture skills. They are learning super environmental skills. They are learning all kinds of just easy technical kinds of things, like with the bike shop and providing alternative means of transportation. We've invested in putting bike trails in the neighborhood to promote and encourage that. They have transformed that place into an art piece, and it's been done with great leadership, adult leadership, but certainly carried out by our young people and our youth.
Okay.
It's a wonderful story.
Okay. Well, it's 11:45 right now, so maybe pause